On today's episode of Dance Med Spotlight, I'm speaking with Caitlin Thamm. She is from Dance Care Australia. She spent years in her early life working towards becoming a professional dancer, hours of training, getting to the point of touring overseas for auditions, and then eventually decided to make a transition out of the dance world as a dance professional and stepping into this space of counseling and mental health support. She particularly specializes in working with dancers and making sure that they feel supported through all of the different challenges and things that happen as a dancer by somebody who has been in those same shoes. We talk a lot in this episode about mindset and self-talk, the role of mental health support, and that seeking out support can be a good thing and can help you be that much more successful and happy through your dance career, whatever that means. We talk a bit about some of those different journeys and transitions that happen as a dancer as well, and so much more. A lot of what we talk about is more towards the perspective of the dancers themselves, but we also talk about some elements that are for our dance educators. So be sure to check out this episode. Welcome back to another episode of Dance Med Spotlight, where we talk about all things dance medicine and dance science. Today, we have a guest from a new part of the world. Yay, always expanding. We have Caitlin Thamm, who is a counselor primarily for dancers out of Australia. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here. Thanks, Alyssa.
So, Caitlin, one of the first questions that I always ask folks as guests here is what got you in this space of doing what you do and working with dancers? What's sort of the short story version?
Yes, short story, because there's so many different parts that kind of come into it. I think I was in the space where I was auditioning for professional companies, and eventually came back home because things were tough. Money was running out, and had to kind of ask myself this question of, do I actually want to keep pushing through? And when I engaged with uni, because I found this kind of passion that I wanted to help people in some sort of capacity. I was in this space of, I've been dancing for so long. Am I just leaving it all behind? And finding this kind of beautiful connection of where I was at university studying counseling, and my knowledge, my just everyday knowledge and experience, in all sorts of different circumstances that the dance world brings, coming together. And I think one day I was just like, is there actually any support, like mental health support specifically for dancers? And I Googled it and said, like, is there counseling for dancers? Is there anyone out there? And funnily enough, Terry Hyde, in the UK, came up. And so I reached out to him, but I was like, this needs to be a thing. And I've seen so many of my own friends, and colleagues go through battles, and sure, they find really helpful specialists and psychologists and that sort of thing. But I always found that once I came back into the studio, it was still kind of the same story. And I was like, well, we just need that specialized understanding, so that they're not sitting in sessions explaining what this exercise is, where they got injured, or that sort of thing. There's just this understanding that I don't have to explain things to you. So that's short of the short story, I ended up getting my master's of counselling and becoming a registered counsellor, and Dance Care Australia was born, and now I'm just working and having fun in this space as well as family life. But
that's
a
awesome.
short story.
Well, and I find so often those of us who end up working in this sort of dance medicine world, we have some sort of dance background ourselves and either have sort of recognized a void that we felt like we could fill, or have
Mm.
stories of our own of, maybe some challenge that we came up against and wish we had somebody who supported us, or,
Yeah.
a few lucky people where I hear the story of I had a great example of somebody who was
Mm.
able to support and I wanted to continue
Mm.
that idea. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that is such a sort of common story for where we originated our professions now and what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'm starting to see that what you just mentioned. Like I saw someone that I had great support from. There's a lot more people who are coming out of the dance space and like, oh, I want to support them in this way that I've seen that you have and coming alongside them. So it's really exciting to add more to the team.
Mhm. What what are some of the things that maybe you more commonly have people need support in as
Mm.
dancers?
Mm. Um, I suppose it's honestly a variety, but
Mhm.
when it comes back to, I think, the way that we talk to ourselves. Um, and you, I mean, I had this when I was growing up and when I was a little dancer as well. We start training and our teachers are there to help us get better.
Mhm.
And I think inadvertently, they end up always pointing out the things that need improving on. And while we're younger, that that self-talk, like, it's still developing, and so the people that we're around a lot, that becomes our voice, and so when little dancers are in the studio and they're like, "Oh, no, I need to do this, I need to turn out my hip more, my leg's not high enough, that blah, blah, blah," that kind of always needing to prove, which is how we survive, right? We're always looking to improve so that we can become better and be more successful in just everyday
Mhm.
living. But when we don't also add the the talk that's actually acknowledging where we've come from and what we can do and what we are able to do, we lose that, and our brain becomes this like
Mhm.
insane wired connection that is just always looking and always kind of looking at ourselves of I'm not good enough. I need to be better in all of these areas and never what am I great at? What is me that I bring to this audition or this performance? And what am I excited to do? And I notice that in myself a lot as well. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm still in the process as a human being of, strengthening that voice, strengthening that inner cheerleader. So, um, but yeah, it takes a lot of work, and because we've been so young and using those pathways in our brain over and over and over and over again, they've become strong. So yeah, I'd say that that would be a lot of what it comes down to is just trying to build up that encourager within the dancers because I think, yeah, once they're able to do that and commit to it too, um, that can be the catch 22 is people think, oh yeah, I just got to talk encouraging to myself. It's like, oh no,
Right.
yeah, you've actually got to put in the work. You put in the work for your dance class. So if you want this to be something that changes your dancing, then yeah, you've got to
Mhm.
put it there as well. But no, things are
Yeah.
kind
I
of in the
think
baseline.
I think something that you said there, it makes me my brain always goes in like 10 million places as people are talking and thinking about different
Yeah.
things, but one of them is I think so often as dancers in particular, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of areas in life where like we're looking for feedback. We're looking for ways to improve and learn and that sort of thing. But dance in particular has this like different feel to it sometimes where, it's a lot more about your outward presentation of things. We spend a lot of time looking in the mirror. We
Mm.
tend to do a lot of comparison in classes of, well, she has better turnout than me, or look at her feet. My feet don't look like hers. And hearing a lot of those kinds of corrections. But I think at
Mm.
least, historically sometimes don't get as much of the feedback of, but you did this really well. And this is what you're
Yeah.
really good at. And having that other kind of frame of feedback that we're getting.
Mm. And I think you kind of briefly touched on it, like absolutely touched on how, it's always coming from this outward thing rather than from ourself as well. And that's how we learn is from our feedback, whether it is positive or negative. But yeah, providing those spaces in the studio for those dancers to be like, okay, like actually how do you feel? Like being in touch, being in tune with yourself and knowing your body and also knowing your mind as well as yeah how you can build on that rather than I just need to rely on my teacher for feedback and that sort of thing.
Hmm. I know one thing that I've gotten in the habit of myself is, with the swing dancing that I do now, I will sometimes set up a camera down in my basement where I have some space to be able to dance, turn on some music, and just try stuff. See things where it's like I've seen videos online, or, oh, did we lose something? I'm going to pause this for a minute here. Going again here. There we go. Yeah, one of the things that I've started doing in my own dance, particularly when it comes to swing dancing, is I will go into the basement, set up a camera, play some music, and just start trying stuff, whether it's things that
Mm,
I learned in class or that I've seen online, things that I think maybe this will work well for my body and how I can express myself in dance, or things where it's like, I wonder if I can do this or not. And then I watch it back, which is a whole nother experience, and kind of go, that didn't work out the way that I thought, or that was awkward. I need to work on that a
mm,
little bit more. But like
mhm.
forcing myself to do that exploration of like, what is my flavor of the dance? What is
Yeah,
sort of my character in it, and that sort of thing.
yeah.
And that has been sometimes a bit of a painful process to go through, but it has
Mm,
also just made me so much more confident in
mm,
what I do have as a dancer.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, because you're looking at, yeah, what do I have, not what does this person have that I don't have. And you're actually
Mhm,
being able to form that understanding of who you are and what your capabilities are. And that's so much more solid foundation than going off of other people's in comparison.
mhm, and it's something where, I wish I had learned that so much
Mm.
younger, not just in the last few years, but I mean, if I had
Yeah.
been encouraged to do some of that sort of self-exploration even as a
Mm.
kid, I think,
Yeah.
I probably would have been in a slightly different place with just how I felt about my own dancing too, even though I never had, aspirations of doing it professionally or anything like
Yeah.
that. It just definitely would have been like a different dance world for me, I think.
Yeah. Completely different experience. Yeah. Definitely.
Mhm. I know one of the things that I sometimes will hear from particularly younger dancers who are training a lot, maybe pre-professional or in a vocational program, things about feeling like if they don't do things in a certain way, they're going to get in trouble or get yelled at by their teacher, or they'll phrase it in a lot of different ways. But some of that pressure that comes being in the training space,
Mm.
what is maybe, I guess, first, something that you would tell a dancer who's verbalizing things like that?
Hmm. I feel like this can venture into pretty tricky territory. Yeah,
Mhm.
I suppose it comes into understanding is it acceptable behavior that you're receiving in the environment in the first place? Because if we're tiptoeing in abusive sort of environments, then there's a whole other different conversation that needs to happen. But what would I say to a dancer? It's hard, I think, and it can always be maybe just one teacher that kind of,
Mhm.
or one judge or one choreographer that you have at the start of the day and ruins the entirety of your day, even week. And they just have the capacity to, yeah, completely change your mindset in those classes and that sort of thing. Um, I think finding the ways to find your safe place within yourself, um, yeah, connecting with that, just reflecting on it. What is your safe place? How do you feel safe? Because if you can tell yourself, and if you can come back to that place of safety, in those circumstances, then your body, your mind is going to be so much calmer, and be able to rationally appraise that feedback, that
Mhm.
pressure that you might feel like they're placing on you. Is this actually, like, is this fair feedback that these people are giving me, or is this like reasonable expectations that they're setting for me of, because I'm not the most flexible, and they're comparing me to this bendy person that I'm standing next to, and like, is this reasonable? Kind of actually fact checking in a way, for
Mhm.
yourself. Um, we and sometimes rightly so, we place our teachers, our guides, in the dance world on this pedestal. But I think, if you're not feeling comfortable, if you're not feeling safe, then that's something to listen to yourself. You don't need to keep bashing yourself because you don't feel like you're meeting what they're asking you to do all the time. Yeah.
Mhm.
I hope that answers your question. But yeah,
Yeah.
uh, finding your safe place and just, yeah, evaluating, is this fair? Because sometimes it's not, and it could be a reflection on the person that's giving the feedback as well. Okay, they're actually
Mhm.
having a really tough day, and they're putting that on me, so that's nothing that I need to be responsible for.
Mhm.
That's on them, and I can do my own work to better myself, to get to my goals, sort of thing.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, thinking from like the teacher perspective,
Mm,
especially when you're teaching a group or something like that, you're trying to give feedback to a lot of different people, or feedback that maybe is kind of a blanket for everyone in the room versus it being directed at one person. And I think sometimes it can kind of get a little easy to, um, I'm trying to think of how to say it. Like sometimes it comes off maybe a little bit more directed or harsh than you intended it to.
mm.
Are there any guides that you could give to like that teacher of how to check in with yourself, or how to, kind of temper what you're sharing to make sure that it's coming off in a productive way versus maybe coming
Mm,
off in that more harsh perspective?
yeah, I yeah, because it comes from majority of dance teachers, right? It's coming from a place from care. You care so much about your dancers. You just want to see them excel, and you're the one who can see their potential. You want them to be able to step into that, and sometimes when there are things getting in the way, you're like, oh, just I wish you would do this, because you have no
Mhm.
idea how it will help you, and so I completely empathize with. Yeah, I mean, I have 2 kids, and I lose my temper more than I would like, and I'm always reflecting and being like, "Okay, like, that was maybe a bit more than what I hoped to." We're not accepting that we're not perfect beings. We're always going to have this
Mhm.
fluctuating up and down of not expecting ourselves to perform all the time. I think knowing your baseline, of when you're well, when you're healthy, when you feel like you're happy, and what tells you that you're in that space, and giving yourself permission in those classes that if, yeah, you do find that you're giving blanket harsh statements, that you're noticing maybe the kids like draw back a little bit or like become really quiet. They can give you heaps of cues as well, and just giving
Mhm.
yourself permission to take a moment in class. It's not, we have this idea that we need to make every minute count, and in that sense, yes. And so take that moment, take that little break of just like, okay, I'm feeling like my levels are just a bit more heightened than maybe I would like them to be or would be normally. And I mean, it's such a great
Mhm.
opportunity to bring your dancers into that space as well, being like, hey, I need to check in with myself. Can you guys check in with yourself with me? And walking them through that. Um, knowing where you are, knowing where you might venture and what's your baseline, knowing when it gets out of whack. What are those things? Is your body tense
Mhm.
up, like when you're starting to get to that point? What are the things that you might say to yourself as well? Because a lot of times it can be the inner dialogue that then comes out through your corrections or feedback.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And I think that giving yourself permission to like check back in with yourself is huge. Whether you're the teacher or the dancer, or I mean, so many situations in life, I feel like that is just good advice.
Right? Yeah, I should probably take it a little bit more.
Same.
No, yeah, no, yeah, you are in that space of, you get to teach dancers how to dance, but I mean, we already know it, dance teachers teach their dancers so much more life skills as well, so just
Mhm.
add to it, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes me think about times where I get to do seminars and classes with the dance educators themselves and talking about how, there are a lot of things that we can model for the dancers that we work with, whether it is,
Mm,
you know, if I'm dealing with an injury, am I just trying to push through and do the best I can, or is it something where I'm giving myself a little bit of grace and saying, I don't need to be pushing my body like this right now because I am nursing an injury? Are you taking water breaks during class? Are you, just like all of these little things that can be
mhm,
such tiny habits,
mhm.
but just showing that like this is an okay behavior to have or a good behavior to have can be really
Yeah,
powerful too.
absolutely hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's another thing that becoming a parent, you see what your habits are because they reflect them, they mirror them because that's all they see, and you're an important person in their life, and that's a lot of
Mhm.
pressure, but it can also be really incredible as well.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of having support when it comes to mental health. I think sometimes just in culture in general, not dance specifically, there can be
Mm,
this thing of like, well, if I go to somebody for help, it must mean that I really have problems, or like there's
mm,
this kind of like negative idea of going and seeking out support for mental health versus it being also a good thing, just like I go to a dentist for regular checkups and regular care, like that is normal. Why don't we have that perspective when we get to something like mental health? What are some of the things
right.
that you see within the dance world when it comes to that seeking support?
Yeah, I think I see we're still in that space of responding to what happens. I like this analogy of, at the moment I'm a practitioner that primarily works with dancers. I'm at the bottom of the cliff and they're jumping off and I'm catching them. But ideally, I want to be the type of practitioner, the type of counselor that's up the top of the cliff and stopping them from falling off in the first place.
Mhm.
There's always going to be a mix of both throughout anything. We're never going to be perfect because things happen without um, being able to be prepared for it. But yeah, I think we're still in that space. Unfortunately, I see the movements happening. There's
Mhm.
still, just in society in general, just this, I think, misunderstanding of what it's like to look after your mental health and actually do it. You know, I suggest breathing, particular breathing exercises to people, and people know, oh yeah, like I need to take breaths and stuff, but like no, actually, I had a client the other week, and they're like, it actually works. I'm like, yeah, that's that's why we say these things. It does seem really simple, and in some ways it is, which is why it can be really. Sorry, there's screaming kids.
That's all right.
Which is why it can be so frustrating sometimes, because sometimes just like that teacher giving themselves permission to take a break, to check in with themselves, that those small little incremental things can be so powerful in the long term.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, definitely exciting to see more happen, but I think we still have long ways to go for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I've definitely noticed just in the last few years, I'm at least hearing more
Mm.
kind of outward discussion of how do we support mental health for performers or I'm getting ready to teach a class actually next week, and a question of for young dancers in particular, especially if they're in the competitive world, there's a lot of pressure. What are things that we can do to try easing some of the pressure for them? There's at least some of these questions and like a desire to want to find some sort of answer, guidance, or that kind of thing. Whereas, even 5, 10 years ago, I felt like people just weren't even saying those things out loud. Even
Yeah,
if they were
yeah.
wondering about them themselves, at least it's being said.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the conversation is coming up a lot more, and it's nice to see. That's for sure.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the younger dancers are growing up now, knowing that this is an important part for them to look after. So it's now up to us as the leaders in the industry to be able to have those spaces for them, um,
Mhm.
give them the feedback that they know that they need.
One of the things that often comes up for dancers and performers is also just kind of transitions and things that happen throughout their dance careers.
Mm,
Whether that is sort of graduating from a studio once they're no longer a kid and wanting to pursue something after that, or
mm,
even something as simple as we're entering audition season, we're leaving a company that we were dancing with and going to another one. A show that we've been in is now coming to an end, and there's a transition from that to the next thing. Talk a little bit about some of what you see when it comes to transitions like that within the dance space.
mm. I come back to my own story a lot when reflecting on this space, because I had that like real pivotal moment of, okay, I'm exiting this dance world. What do I do? But then also coming back and being like, how can I reincorporate what I've spent years of my life dedicated towards? How can that still be influencing what I'm doing in this new season, this new journey? Because there's a lot of, I think, space for you to have that self-reflection in those times. You're transitioning, and there's a lot of questions to answer, and only you have the answers to them. But I think what I might have missed out on, and what would have really been nice, particularly in those audition seasons, but then in the next, like, transitioning out of dance, is having someone there to support me through that. I mean,
Mhm.
outside of the dance world, I didn't know anything. I mean, I had
Mhm.
to start volunteering for things because I didn't have anything on my resume, because I wasn't able to have a job outside of school hours because I was dancing all the time. Just little things like that, and being able to to build yourself up and connecting with your values that you have because of dance, but can still transfer into the other areas of other lives. But yeah, I think having the person there to be able to guide you through that, and not having the pressure of I need to figure out what I need to do now. Is this a company, the kind of company that I do want to connect with? Is this sure? Like I get that space of I just need a new job, but is it really really serving you if you say yes to anything that comes up, or is it going to be just the worst decision of your life? Um, you
Mhm.
don't know those things, and I understand the desperation in those spaces. So having someone alongside to voice them, to kind of just put them out of your brain, and kind of take a part. And that's what I love doing, because we can talk to friends and they can be like, oh yeah, that sucks, oh yeah, that like that happened to me, and it's not
Yeah.
this, it's just not just focusing on you and how you want to mold your next steps in life, or how you want to approach your audition season. When you're talking to a friend, it's like, oh yeah, they're not looking to support you or to guide you along and understanding what it is that you want. Whereas that's what the space that I offer is I'm not worried about me, I'm worried about you, and I'm listening to you and your needs, and I'm noticing things that, like, I'm really intently listening to you because I want to pick up on things that maybe you're voicing, but you're not actually hearing yourself. And
Yeah.
that that in itself, of just having someone there, the I yeah, I just I wish I could make other people really understand of how beneficial it is to not have to do it on your own. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people coming out of any of those, coming out of audition season, coming out of pre-professional, coming out of your dance school, coming out of uni, it feels like you're on your own a lot, and that you have
Mhm.
to figure it out, and you have to write that pathway. And in some sense you do, but you actually don't have to do it by yourself. That's yeah.
Yeah. I think, again, multiple things are coming to my brain as you're talking about all of this, but, one of them is this idea also, I think especially younger dancers, or like when you're coming to something that is a new experience, it can be really easy to feel like, well, I'm the only one who's experiencing this. No one else has ever done this. It's also new, and you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have the context, you don't have the coping skills, you don't have whatever.
Hmm.
And so having somebody that you can talk with to kind of help you guide you through that process, because other people have gone through the same thing, maybe something a little bit different, maybe a different flavor of that challenge or
Yeah.
transition. But this, like, it's not just you, and being able to bat that around with somebody else, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, your journey is your own, and
Mhm.
make it that. But coming to the place, yeah, because we see, I just went overseas because that's what people did after pre-professional. They went on an audition tour. That's just all I heard. So I was like, okay, I have to do that too. Let's save up and get on a plane. And okay, I travel to the cities where I audition. Right, okay, I'm gonna look at them up, and that sort of thing. And there's so many more resources out there too to help in that time, and which I think is incredible. And um, but yeah, knowing what your journey is, but then yeah, being able to have someone to guide you in that as well. I
Mhm.
think that there was actually this, and maybe this, I think this is relevant, but there was this research study, and they were looking into how people self-regulate, and I think there's a lot
Mhm.
of emphasis on I need to be able to regulate myself by my own. Like I need to be able to do this, and in some senses we do. We need to build those skills to be able to cope. But they were looking into how they saw the differences of self regulation when with other people, and
Mhm.
they had this experiment where they got someone to kind of stand at the foot of a mountain, say, and so a lot of the self-regulation happens in the front of your brain, and so they were looking at I think fMRIs, I think,
Mhm.
and they would see a lot of that activity happening in, but when they were by themselves looking up that mountain being like, oh my gosh, it's terrifying, like this is a huge mountain, I can't do it by myself, this is not possible, or just really fearful, like fight or flight, when our brain starts to react to those scary situations or those new situations. um, and then they had three scenarios. So the first one, they just had them face the mountain by themselves. Second one,
Mhm.
they brought in a stranger, and they noticed a lot of decrease in "Oh, okay, yeah, I think maybe I could do this now. Seems a little bit more doable. Still terrifying." And then the third time, they brought in someone that they had a deep connection with, and they notice a complete 180 from that first scenario of, yeah, this mountain looks so small, like this is fine, I can do
Mhm.
this. And but what the interesting thing was, like, it didn't actually, so when we get in those stressful situations, our the back of our brain fires up into that fight or flight, freeze, fawn mode. It reacts, because it wants to protect ourselves. That's our survival instinct. And so it fires up, and then we think we need to self regulate. And so what they thought was that they were going to see a lot more activity happen in the front of our self regulation when they brought in people. But what was actually happening was your brain wasn't firing that survival instinct in the first place. When they had that
Mm.
supportive person in, you didn't need to self regulate, because you had someone there that was calming you down. And so I think that builds upon, having someone there to co-regulate. And that's where I come from. I'm a person who can I'm a stranger, yes. We can build a bit more of a connection so that we can trust each other. I'm
Mhm.
not going to be that third person who you have a deep relationship with. Um, but they notice that already by the presence of someone being there. So yeah, if that just encourages anyone to think, okay, yeah, actually, it's going to be helpful for me to do it by myself. I'm not going to end up in this survival mode, just freaking out and stressing and feeling like I also need to approach this stressful situation and also calm myself down, because that's a lot to do.
Right.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes me think of other studies that I've looked at just from the physio perspective of, there was a research or a couple of research studies where they looked at dancers dancing in a group and like learning group choreography versus doing it solo, and even having
Mm,
differences in how they perceive pain and
mm,
what their pain thresholds were and things like that, and that it made a difference doing it synchronized in a group versus
mm,
doing the same exact thing solo. And I think it
yeah,
just speaks to the power of having somebody else there with you. It
yeah,
can have an effect on so many different things, physical,
mhm,
mental, and otherwise. Um,
mhm,
and there's a lot of
absolutely,
opportunity in the dance community because, it is just that, a community where we often are
yeah,
interacting somehow with other folks. Um,
yeah,
there's a lot
and
of power there too.
yeah, and I get that, it really feels like it's just you against the world, and it's just all these individuals fighting for this one spot in the company or this one role in the performance. It can really feel like it's just everyone's fighting for it. But I think if you step into that space of, okay, but we all wanna make this performance. We all wanna make a company that's, the best that it can be. I'm not here to push someone down so that I can get up. If we can harp on
Mhm.
that as much as possible, I think we're gonna have the dance world is already amazing in itself in the way that we work together. But if we can really double down on this, oh my gosh, I think we'll be unstoppable.
Mhm. One of the things that I absolutely love again, going back to the swing dance world and when I'm at competitions
Mm,
or things like that. And even the difference that it makes when, like, I was at a competition last weekend and we had to go in heats because there were too many of us. So a group of
yeah.
us from the same division would go out and do our dances, and then a next group would come out. And while whoever was off the floor was watching, they're still cheering for people that they're competing against, like quite literally competing against for a placement,
Mhm.
but still cheering them on and hearing voices that you recognize in particular while you're out there going, yeah, Alyssa, or, things like that. It was just like, oh yeah, it's a nice little like
Yeah.
confidence booster. And that's one of the things that I so love about that community, where even
Yeah.
though we are directly in competition for a placement
Mhm.
with one another, there still can be such support.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love that. And because, you know, you're hearing those voices of encouragement, and you're not spending that time in your brain being like, "Oh, they're judging me," and they're making all these sort of thoughts and that are really terrible, and, thinking about that. Instead, you're hearing those encouraging things. And because, you know, likelihood of people actually thinking horrible things about your dancing when they're watching is very minuscule anyway. But for some reason, we have this ability to heighten and just completely blow it out of proportion. So when we actually show those ways of encouragement towards others and in those competitive spaces, that it's, essentially not competitive as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Let's talk a little bit about, maybe for people who are hearing some of the things that we're talking about and hearing, it's good to have someone to support you. It's good to build some of these skills for self regulation. It's, some of these different things. What might that look like for someone who's like, okay, I want to do something about this, but
Mm.
what options are there? What do I do
Mm,
now?
great question. Um, what I can obviously only speak from my experience and how I operate, but what I do when I initially meet with people is kind of understanding first their story, knowing where they come from, um, but seeing what their goals are. What are they seeing that is not happening, and what would they actually like to be if we were to work together, in any sort of capacity? What are you hoping would be the outcome? Um, I think it just starts with as small a step as you feel capable of. This is also a hard thing to put yourself out there, and every time someone messages me or emails me or makes a booking, I just like, that typical like small business. I do a happy dance because I know how incredibly difficult and how much has gone into building you up to that first little step of just clicking send or clicking book. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't want to shut, like, just like, I don't want to not, I don't want people to, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Um, I don't want them to think that it's not a huge achievement,
Mhm.
because it is. And that hopefully, I think that first step is where it will kind of open two pathways. For myself, sometimes every dancer is not fitted for working with me because, I mean, you know how all different teachers, like, you find that you work better with other people. So I'm not going to be the
Mhm.
be all and end all for every single dancer, and so I have a network that I work with as well, so that, initial stepping, dipping your toe into it, finding out, and connecting with someone who is connected to that world web, of ways that can support you. Maybe it is more that you just need more coaching rather than mental health counseling,
Mhm.
um, which I think some can go hand in hand, but maybe there's a different focus that is just not suited to one practitioner versus another.
Mhm.
Um, just exploring and kind of letting it take you where it is. Um, and understanding what that person can do for you. Ask them, what can you do for me? What will you do for me? And what is your, goals as well,
Mhm.
for when I come to sessions and I share my heart and soul to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you hit on a really important point there of it's also okay if people aren't quite the right fit. It's not that you reach out to somebody and they have to be the one to help you, and if they can't, then no one can.
Hmm.
Or that there's only one way that any of this works. A lot of
Hmm.
times I tell people who reach out to me too, even if we've gotten started with something and it's like, I don't know that I am the best fit for you. Let me send you to so and so down the street because this is what they can offer for you. That is
Yeah.
not my thing or not my skill set or,
Mm.
whatever it may be. And so I think knowing that it is okay and normal to maybe
Mm.
have to try a couple of different people or try a
Yeah.
couple of different techniques.
Yeah. Or also it might just give you or me that shift and being like, okay, let's take a different approach to this. I
Mhm.
always check in with my clients, if not every session, every couple of sessions, be like, are we on track here? Because I don't want to be wasting your time and your money. Like, it's
Yeah.
no point for either us to be here and completely going off in a different direction. But that's my
Mhm.
duty of care, and probably your duty of care to make sure we're giving you quality services.
Mhm. Yeah, that collaboration both ways makes a big difference for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely.
And I know, I've worked with some different therapists, counselors, coaches, whatever, just personally over the years. And the ones that I ended up connecting with the best and sort of feeling like I got the most out of our time together, I guess you could say, um, were the ones who were checking in regularly and doing a lot of things where it was I'm trying to think of how to even describe it. It kind of felt more like a choose your own adventure book. You get to
Mm,
certain points and kind of here are some different things that we can try. What sounds
mm,
good to you? Or, I've been noticing this. What if we try whatever? Um, versus the ones where it was just this is the way that it works. This is the
yeah,
next step. Or, you
yeah,
know, being a little more like regimented with things, I guess. Um, and just feeling like I could be in that space of having that collaboration from the patient side of it too
yeah.
was really
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah, yeah. What I love so much about what I do is that it's not prescriptive. It's not, we're all individuals. You come in here and I learn about you so that I can understand you better. And I like what you were saying about your experience of, you know, things come up. You come with one issue and then you end up talking about a completely different side topic for the rest of the session. It's amazing how things can just sneak its way in, and you didn't even understand that it was a huge part that you were just not even acknowledging before. So yeah, always coming in, checking in, being like, hey, I'm noticing this is something different to what you initially came in here for. Is this still you seeing the benefits of going this way?
Hmm. Most definitely. Um, at this point, I think this is a good opportunity for a special segment on the show. So we have the final bow. Essentially, this is the take home message for our
Mhm.
conversation together. We've talked about a lot of different things, different topics from different perspectives. What is one thing that you hope someone listening walks away with?
Mm. So many different things. Hey,
And if you want to pick a couple, that's okay too.
yeah. No, that's fine. Um, I mean, I hope that this is just a a better insight into how addressing your mental health, how looking for support can transform your dance journey, and um, stepping into that space of knowing and accepting and and being brave about not doing it by yourself. I think that that's my key thing of and it comes from my desire for me to just want to be there for every dancer because I know how hard it can be, and in those most difficult seasons, but I also want to celebrate with you as well. That's what I find is the most privilege for my work, is being able to walk alongside dancers, because it's such a sacred space. And so anyone that invites me into that, I'm so grateful and honored to be there. But yeah, I would love for more people to just want to welcome other people to support them in that journey, because I just, yeah, so that they can be the best dancer that they can be, and so that they can
Mhm.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. And then last and certainly not least, the shameless plug. So this is your opportunity to talk about anything that you have going on, anything that you want to promote. Go ahead and share what you'd like.
Perfect. Yeah, so I have just launched an audition bundle recently, kind of, you know, talking on that working alongside with people. I know that when I was auditioning overseas, I was completely stripped from my usual supports, the people, my family around me, knowing just where to get food from, simple things like that. And so I created the audition bundle because I know that some people might not feel like they want to commit so much time and energy and money towards regular counseling sessions. And so there's this dedicated bundle that has well, an initial consultation. We get to know each other, but two sessions,
Mhm.
sorry, um, has two sessions, for before your auditions and after your auditions, so that you can prepare yourself, but then also reflect on it with myself, and kind of maybe refocus if that's needed. But also there's things like this, a self-care checklist, a mindfulness moment, journal guiding sheet, and some recordings for you to listen to, and other things. And I have a few things in the work pipeline, that might be coming out in terms of supporting dancers and just making it a bit more fun. And
Mhm.
yeah, so that's at the moment. And I think people are starting to go into that season now more than ever. So please reach out, and you can use it at any time. It's no, you can buy it and then use the sessions whenever is suitable for you. So that's the flexibility around it. So
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin, for your time today. It was great getting to chat
thank
with you about all
you.
of this.
This was amazing. I loved it.
Dance Med Spotlight is hosted and produced by Alyssa Arms. We discuss all things dance medicine. This has been another episode from Dance Med Spotlight. The Dance Med Spotlight is intended for educational purposes only. No clinical decision making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present.